What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. Today we're talking all about season extension and using low tunnels to extend your season or potentially grow throughout the entire winter, depending upon what zone you're in. But either way, I'm going to show y'all how to build them. I'm going to give you a little bit of info about the cost, so let's jump into it. So using low tunnels, in my opinion, is the easiest way to get your garden or your farm under cover so that your plants don't die from a frost or freeze. They're really pretty simple to make and don't cost that much. So what we've done when we built out these tunnels on our farm is we have hoops every 5 feet. This will help keep some of the structure if you ever have snow or anything like that. Now we've built these with 1/2-inch EMT or electrical conduit. Those come in 10-foot sections. You can get those at any major hardware store. The other thing you're going to need is rebar. We got number 3 rebar, I believe, which is 3/8 inch. And that's going to be hammered into the ground on each side, basically to give your hoops the support they need. And then lastly, you're going to need greenhouse plastic and a bunch of clips. So this is our bender jig that we built. And essentially, I just cut blocks of 2x4s and then sunk 2 screws in them. And then I put it on to this piece of plywood. Now I also drilled the plywood up against our deck because it just made it a little bit easier. But you will need some way to secure this because you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on it as you're bending this conduit. Again, this is 10 feet long and it is a 1/2 inch in diameter. You're going to come up here and you're going to basically put it into that section, and then you're going to pull down, and it's simply bending your hoop. And this is a really easy way, y'all, to get some relatively uniform hoops. Now, to give you some context of the size of our beds that we're covering with these low tunnels, we have 30-inch beds, which is kind of standard for market gardening. And you can either cover up one of these beds or 2, but it's just going to depend on how big your walkways are. Here, for example, behind me, we have a section where we have 2 beds covered up and we have 1 bed. When you're covering up 2 beds, again, depending on how wide your walkway is, you're gonna have to stretch that pretty significantly. So you're gonna want to cut your rebar up into pieces. You could do 1 foot, 1.5 feet, 2 feet, doesn't really matter. But you're gonna wanna hammer this into the ground to where you have, 3 or 4 inches sticking out on the top, because that's where we're gonna stick that conduit into, because that's going to give it some extra support. Instead of just jamming it into the ground, which I've seen a lot of market gardeners do, we're going to put this in at each side so that we get good support with those hoops. So we got this side hammered in. Now we're going to do this side, and then we're going to put our first hoop up. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can span 2 beds with these 10-foot hoops. However, for this section, we're just doing it on 1. What you're gonna need to do there in that context is actually, you're gonna need to pull these together a little bit because we don't have as much width that we're covering. Now, as you are putting these onto the tops of the rebar, you wanna really make sure and jam them into the ground good so that they don't pop out. So after you put all your hoops up, obviously from there you're going to put your greenhouse plastic on. You can order greenhouse plastic from a lot of different places, but you're going to want to get a lot of clips. And these clips that I have right here are phenomenal because they're really strong. And so I would suggest getting a lot of them because this greenhouse plastic is like a sail. You got to think about it. When the wind catches it, if it's not secure, it's going to rip off and fly away. Now, in regards to venting these, you got to think about it. When you're trapping airspace in a greenhouse or a low tunnel or a hoop house, basically that air is going to warm up very quickly. And so you've got to vent these things. Because there's not a lot of air mass in poly low tunnels, because they're much smaller in comparison to a hoop house or a greenhouse, it heats up fast. And if you left those closed all day, your plants would melt. So you've got to vent these, even if it's 20 degrees out and the sun's coming up. You need to get out there and vent them, or else you will croak your plants. The other thing is, I would suggest closing them before the sun sets so they can trap and get some heat in those tunnels, especially if it's going to be really cold at night. Now, we're in zone 7B, so for our context, we can use these pretty much to grow year round, especially in the winter. It will get pretty cold in our climate occasionally, but we don't really dip into the single digits very often. But if we do, then I would put multiple layers of frost blankets on top of these plants that we're growing now, along with the tunnel that we have. Basically, you can think about it that every layer of plastic that you have over your plants is like going down a zone, a hardiness zone. So if you grow in zone 7B, for us, when we have this plastic over top of all of our plants, it's like us growing in zone 8. So we built 8 poly low tunnels, and that could cover up to 16 50-foot beds, and it cost us about $1,300, I believe. So in reality, you know, if you only wanted to build 2 tunnels, it's really not going to cost you that much. The best route you can take is by doing some research on your own, looking up what your local hardware supply or electrical supplier can supply you with in regards to the conduit. And we got the greenhouse plastic from Bootstrap Farmer. All right, y'all, so that's that on the low tunnels. If you have any questions whatsoever, comment down below. Would love to hear from you and would love to help you. If you found this content helpful and want to see more of it, smash that subscribe button, and we'll look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. Happy growing.